You're listening to CreepGeeks Podcast. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/CheapGeek. So it begins again. Welcome back to the CreepGeeks Podcast, episode number 165.
Paranormal kids and drama, coronavirus intensifies, Colorado drones weren't real, Bigfoot on camera, and Art Bell.
Yeah. And we're back again with the CreepGeeks Podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in. If it's your very first time, hello and welcome. And if it's not your very first time, it's good to see you again. Yeah. So, I got all choked up. This podcast is about what?
The CreepGeeks Podcast is an offbeat news podcast that takes a lighthearted approach to the paranormal, cryptid, strange, the silly, and trending tech topics circulating the web. Broadcasting paranormal news and fun stories from our underground bunker in the mountains of western North Carolina.
Yes. Very good. I'm Greg.
I'm Omi.
And here we go.
Yeah.
Okay. So in this very fine episode, we have lots of stuff to talk about because that's what we do. We try to find the paranormal, weird news and things we find to be interesting on the internet.
Yeah.
And we share them with you. And speaking of share, if you'd like to share with us, we have a toll-free number set up for you to call and leave us a message of some kind, whether it's a story or a suggestion or something.
A lead.
Yeah. You could do that using that number.
That phone number is going to be 575-208-4025.
Yes. So a couple different ways you can support the show. You can support by using that phone number to give us a call. You can also go to our website, creepgeeks.com. We have a contact form there if you'd like to leave a message or type something out. You could do that and tell us a story or something.
You can also email us, and that's going to be contact@creepgeeks.com. Or you can check us out on social media. We have an official Facebook page, that's CreepGeeks Podcast. We have a Facebook group, that's going to be CreepGeeks Facebook group. And yeah, we're pretty active on there.
Yes. And if you shop on Amazon and you want to throw us a bone so we can buy some coffee and keep gas flowing in our albino rhino, utilizing our super special link, we get a small percentage off anything that you buy.
Yep.
Doesn't change the price at all, and it helps us.
Yeah, that link is going to be amazon.com/shop/cheapgeek.
Yeah. And we also have stuff there too. So if you take a look and see, we have a list for, things like paranormal investigations and camper van and all sorts of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So it's kind of what we do. Yeah. So with this particular podcast, we normally like to start off the podcast with a weird or random factoid.
Yeah.
And so our random factoid for this particular episode is...
we had a hard time coming up with the factoid.
Well, we had so much things. We had so many things to talk about that we put up in the title.
Yeah.
Like paranormal kids and drama, coronavirus intensifies, Colorado drones weren't real, all that kind of stuff. And we really just didn't think that we need to go ahead and put a really long, random, interesting factoid in there. So we came up with this.
Yeah. We have a Twitter account and we have an Instagram account.
Yeah, because we don't really talk too much about that. Yeah. Twitters.
We both
get your Instagrams on.
Yeah, we both really, really dig taking pictures and stuff like that. So we do have a fairly active Instagram account. We try to post as often as we can on there.
Yes.
And we do have a Twitter with a very, very small following of very devoted people. So we talk to the same few people over and over again, and we'd like to talk to some more. So
yes.
Find us on Twitter, and we'll put links to both those accounts in the show notes.
Yes.
Yeah.
In our last episode, we talked about the coronavirus, so we have some updates about that. And every time I talk about it, man, I feel like I'm catching the coronavirus.
Would you stop?
I'm serious. It's like...
Okay. And see, I'm the one that does a lot of going out and interacting with the public, so you're not making.
I'm not a hermit. I'm just keeping a low profile.
Yeah. So
I don't want to be on coronavirus's radar for sure.
I want to live in a bunker deep in the mountains of Western North Carolina.
Yeah, that's true. I do. Not a hermit. I'm maybe curmudgeonly, but I'm not a hermit.
Yeah.
But it also snowed today, and that's kind of messed my nose up.
Yeah.
I got corona.
No, you just got the wintertime cold.
I got the crud, man.
Well, even if it's the crud that everybody is calling it, which is not the coronavirus, you have all these schools in these rural areas that may not have exposure to corona, and they're shutting down due to excessive,
people being sick and stuff.
Yeah, excessive absences. There was this one
crazy.
school where one of our friends grew up. He shared it because it was like
they were closed for like 5 days or something.
Yeah,
like that, to clean.
Over like 15% of their staff were sick, and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
I mean, if it's not coronavirus, it's something else right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you have. So
I got the crud. Got it bad.
Yeah.
Okay, so with this particular podcast, we don't normally talk too much about drama.
No, we're not a drama channel.
But there is some drama in the paranormal world, and we're going to talk about it.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. So just to kind of lay it out there like this. Okay, so the subject at hand isn't even really the subject at hand, all right?
No.
So the topic would be, and kind of like what we put up in our title up there, paranormal kids, right? And these are kids that would go out and maybe investigate the paranormal, right? So with the paranormal kids, there's a kid out there who's doing and getting into the paranormal world and is investigating things like that. Kid named Madison.
Yeah.
I think she's 12?
About
12ish. And so she's doing her thing, right? She's got Facebook and she's got a little podcast and she's going out and investigating and meeting people. And she's putting pictures up and doing all this stuff. Well, somebody decided to take and make a post about her, right?
Mm-hmm.
Utilizing her picture and I think some stuff from Facebook, and made a post, and it wasn't a very nice post, right?
Yeah.
And so this particular post has got a lot of attention, okay?
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the post, let me go back and grab it real quick. It's from an adult, an older person, and it basically is a picture of this kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, the caption of the post goes, "Look at this shit right here. A 12-year-old ghost hunter," in quotation marks. "This is irresponsible to a degree that honestly has me shocked."
Yeah.
So.
And there was stuff.
Now, we have some opinions, okay?
But we'll go through the timeline first.
Yeah.
And that timeline is that basically around January 17th-ish or so.
Yeah. Now, keep in mind, this is what we can find on the internet.
Because there have been, and this goes back to drama and tea, there have been some dirty deletes.
Yeah.
And what we have been able to find so far, and because we dig, around January 17th, January 20th-ish or so, an announcement was made that the teenage investigator would be investigating the very well-known Hinsdale house.
Yeah.
And that was posted on Facebook and a couple of other social media places. In fact, this teenager, Madison, actually posted on it on her own FB page.
That means Facebook.
Yeah. Now, a few days later, someplace on Facebook, the Ghost Queen Paranormal, a.k.a. Heather Queen, posted a screenshot of the kid, not necessarily an announcement, but an actual screenshot of the kid with their own commentary, which Greg just read.
Yeah.
Currently, all we can find are screenshots that just the initial post,
right?
Not even the comment thread that started on that one. This post was shared within the paranormal community, eventually making its way back to Madison, her page, and her family. And it did not get the response that the Ghost Queen Paranormal thought it would.
Yeah.
Instead, people dragged her, and basically everything from, there's no reason to bully this child to, some offensive stuff. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, since then, within the past 24, 48 hours, however, by the time you're listening to this, 48-ish,
Yeah.
the teenager posted an official statement on her Facebook page. And that official statement is very decent, well-composed, very political, this is how I feel about this situation.
Politically correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And tons of people have come out in support of her, and many, many people have taken to commenting on Heather Queen's Facebook and YouTube to the point where we couldn't find anything on this person's personal Facebook page.
Yeah.
Everything's been locked down. I think you can only go back to like December, and you can't see anything past December into January. What seemed to set a lot of people off was the kid's image and honestly profanity and some of the language that was used. And this goes down to there's a way to discuss or express a differing opinion without using the likeness of a specific person in the media spotlight. And
so when we looked at this and we first heard about this, I don't remember how it came up.
Actually,
you told me, I think. Somebody told me.
The weird thing was, here's another part of this whole paranormal community drama. We had no idea until our friends were talking about it.
Yeah.
And showing support of Madison.
Yeah.
And
the issue really is this. How old is too old? How young is too young when it comes to your kids or just children in general with paranormal investigation? Now, I think that Heather's intent was to basically say that, 12 years old is too young to be a paranormal investigator, because she said that later on in different places. But what she meant, and I'm using quotes for this because we don't really know, and we can't really, we're just kind of putting out what we see. She meant one thing, but it read completely differently.
Yeah.
It read differently to the point where people are, they're like, hey, this is bullying, and they're basically dragging Heather, and they're saying all this stuff. And I'm not defending her. I'm just saying that I don't think the original intention was to come across the way she did. However, the way she came across when you read that post,
you were like,
I was like, okay, I know exactly why Heather is having this issue. Because because when I read that, I was like, if that was my kid and I had a comment like that, I would be very angry about it.
Yeah.
Like, who do you think? But I don't think that was her intention. Now, if I had made that post and realized that the reaction I was instantly getting was probably coming across because of maybe a miscommunication, I would have tried to get out in front of it and apologize and say, hey, look, I apologize for the way that came across. This is what I was trying to say.
Yeah. But you also would not have used.
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I would have worded it differently too. I would have said, something like, is this safe? I can't believe a 12-year-old's being allowed a paranormal investigator, something like that.
And you probably wouldn't have used her image.
No, I wouldn't have done that either necessarily.
Yeah.
But to be completely 100% honest about the whole thing, I wouldn't have commented at all on this.
Yeah. There's a different...
I wouldn't have made, I wouldn't say comment. I wouldn't have made a specific post about it. It wouldn't have been a post for me to make. I probably would have commented somewhere off another post, but I wouldn't have created a post using that kid's image and doing all that stuff. Because number one, it's a teenager.
And there's a different way to bring that conversation of different opinions.
Right.
Besides grabbing an image of technically a minor and then providing somewhat
and even
offensively worded.
Yeah, and even
statement.
if you look at it like, well, okay, it's on Facebook, so it's a public thing, whatever. But see, where the real problem lies is that now we're no longer talking about the issue, and what was supposed to be the conversation starter about the actual issue has turned into cyberbullying and everything else. Now, all she had to do, Heather, is to clarify.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe understand that people did not take her post the way she meant it, if she meant it that way. But she didn't. She doubled down, right?
Yeah.
And started trying to argue with everybody for every comment and just kind of throwing it out there, thereby proving to everyone who's seen those posts and who's seen that post and who were aggravated and possibly, angered by it, proving them right.
Yeah.
where they're like, what, how dare you? And they were incensed that somebody an adult would speak this way and do this. And she's just proving them right by fighting every comment.
Mm-hmm.
And then she tries to say things like, she tries to bring it back to the issue, 12 years old. I wouldn't put a 12-year-old on investigations, and I wouldn't put them out there and put them in harm's way because you don't really know what's going on. Maybe they're not mature enough. Maybe they can't protect themselves because she's seen a lot of stuff and she's been doing this for a long time. And so other people made comments where I've been doing this for, 40 years. And then she goes right to them after she says that she's been doing it for a long time. And then, how can you say you've been doing it for a long time? Because there's no, and it goes to this back and forth kind of thing that didn't need to happen. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, okay, so people call themselves experts in the field and are recognized as experts in the field, right?
Yeah.
But really at the end of the day, this is ghost hunting, right? It's paranormal investigation. It's whatever you want to look at. It's like, how can you be, did you get a degree? Where is this, is the whole thing is silly because rather than, okay, let me clarify and fix this and be an adult about it, I'm going to double down and fight you to the death.
And not just double down, but go on YouTube. And there's going to be a blog post coming soon.
Oh, yeah, and talk all about it.
Yeah.
So people aren't really,
To me, and part of that, though, to me, is let me just get on my soapbox again, So it feels like she just wants everybody to side with her, and she's going to keep reiterating the same statements because she feels that there's going to be an audience that will listen to her.
Right. And there may be, but she's not making that audience feel welcomed.
No.
By constantly fighting with everybody over this sort of thing. So she meant one thing. It obviously was read differently. People aren't addressing the issue. They're defending the kid. Right.
Yeah.
She didn't have to double down, but she did, and she was in the wrong by, I think, using the kid's image and profile. And now, she's insinuated that the kid's being taken advantage of by the fact that she's doing a show with Nick Garoff and, what's her name?
Oh, man, Elizabeth. Oh, I forgot.
Anyway, St. John, I can't remember her name, but I'm bad with names. And she fights anyone's comments, and the more she tries to defend herself, the more she appears to be what people think that she actually is. Mm-hmm. Or what they perceive her to be, right?
Yeah.
Had she been more eloquent, this whole thing, this whole issue would have been about the issue and not the issue of cyberbullying, which it is now. And she's going to fight, and defend her right to the death to be wrong with this whole thing. Mm-hmm. Now, in my own personal opinion, she's entitled to her opinion, just like everyone's entitled to her opinion. But at the same time, there's a way to get your information across and a way to kind of get out there where it doesn't cause more problems than the actual comments worth. So in some of this, it makes me wonder, okay, well, how much of this did she do to get attention?
Yeah, almost like a drama or reaction community on YouTube, where somebody's going to say something in order to, not start a conversation, but to spark something, And
it's like, okay. And so if you read it from a distance, because I don't think I've ever met her. I don't really know her. I don't think we've ever really met. She sounds familiar to me, and I watched her live stream, which really wasn't a live stream because we watched it after the fact, and it's like she looks familiar, she sounds familiar. I don't know. But at the same time, though, when you kind of put stuff out there like this and you keep fighting it and fighting to the death and basically, attacking people that are attacking you, which I get it, you want to defend yourself, it's kind of off-putting, a little bit. She comes across being slightly condescending.
That's part of it. She, the word cyberbullying is now being used by her to describe what's happening to her.
Yeah.
But there comes a point where if you feed into the attacks and you say things a certain way to bring more attacks in, you're kind of triggering more of that cyberbullying effect.
Yeah. And in some ways people could say, well, if you hadn't started any, there wouldn't have been any.
Yeah.
Don't start none, won't be none kind of a thing. But really what I look at is like, okay, let's take the issue at hand here, right? Mm-hmm. Is it, I don't want to say appropriate because the way, you can do, is it okay for a 12-year-old to be doing paranormal investigations? Right? Now, coming from my side, my gut says that the kid's too young.
Okay.
Now, my gut also says that for anything I think is going to be possibly dangerous to a kid, that's the immediate reaction is no.
Yeah.
Right? So I have to be sort of talked into it, and have to look at it from a different perspective and basically take into account my kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how they are and how mature they are, how grown they are, if they could handle all that sort of thing. In addition to, do they have any experience with this, Because, if you look at this sort of thing and you say, well, I don't think 12-year-olds should be out there doing it, but at the same time, there's kids that are experiencing this sort of thing with haunted houses and ghosts and spirits and all that junk. And do you really want them to be out there using Ouija boards and doing all this crazy stuff? And the fact that I think her family has some experience in this. So it's not like there's no experience there. Granted, the experience may not, experience level may not be like an expert, but
she's not being dropped into a haunted house all by herself.
And she has an interest in it, obviously, and she's doing the research and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I think if you factor all that sort of thing in there with your kid in this particular situation, it's really, a judgment call on the parent.
Yeah. This is the parent's decision.
Yeah. And so my immediate reaction as a parent is always to say no until I get more information and can sort of factor in all the thing. That's just kind of what it is. I would hope, though, that in the future for her, if she decides to keep doing this sort of thing, and it takes her places and does whatever, that's great. But at the same time, I think that since she is so young, if she becomes uninterested in all this sort of thing, I would hope that she's not put in a place or stuck in a spot where she can't get out of it.
Yeah, and that's basically whereas I'm a little more okay or open to children exploring the paranormal and things like that, my concern goes right back to that, where if her interests change, she shouldn't be pigeonholed. And
that's if she's,
or
again,
forced, and I have that same concern with social media influencers, child actors, models, musicians. Last night I was having a conversation with you about Britney Spears and all the terrible things that have happened with her.
Yeah, it's like, what?
She's
not even in control of her own money.
Yeah, and so from that concern, that's where I have the concern for anybody who's so young and in the media spotlight. I am glad this particular teenager seems to be in really good hands.
Yeah.
I have confidence in people like Nick Groff, as well as many of the other paranormal people speaking for her and, supporting her. But it's that whole child actor thing that I always have a concern with.
And I would like to think that, maybe there's some kind of training, because really, what kind of training can you get out here? You know what I'm saying?
Well,
how do you defend yourself against demonic possession? Because if you watch some shows, every episode's a demon.
Yeah.
And that was one of the fears that was brought up, and people brought these up in the comments in different places that were like, what if you bring something home with you, you get exposed to, terrible things, poltergeist activity and all that sort of thing, and what happens if? And the thing is, that's how it is with kids in general, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
What happens if I take the training wheels off the kid's bike and they run into a bush and get hurt? What happens if, it's always what happens if.
What happens if I let them go trick-or-treating and they bring poison candy home?
Yeah, what happens if I let them go to the mailbox and they get taken by somebody? What happens if I let them go to the mailbox, they fall and break an arm? Yeah. It's always what happens if, because that's just how it is with kids and even with dogs. You know what I mean? What happens if I let him outside by himself? Is he going to go out there and bite an extension cord that's plugged into the wall? So there's only so much safety you can do.
Yeah.
And it eventually just gets to the point where as they get older, you have less and less control. And honestly, if you were like, okay, well, you have to wait till you're 18, it's like, well, okay, so
that's just going to cause that whole rebellion thing.
And there really is there's no standard for this that says you can't investigate or do paranormal investigations till you're 18, unless the event that you're going to, like maybe it's some ticketed investigation or something like that, unless they have a rule.
Yeah. Which,
And honestly, personally, I would make that, if I was going to do ticketed investigations or put on events like that, I would have an 18 rule.
Yeah.
Not because I'm worried about your kid's safety, because I'm worried about everybody's safety.
Yeah.
But because it's liability as well.
Yeah. And so,
you know what I mean?
So you're speaking about spiritual safety. You're less worried about as you are insurance liability safety.
Well, at the end of the day, if they're doing the investigation or whatever, and they're there and they're by themselves, and they're 17 or 16 or whatever, and they fall and break a leg and they didn't get possessed by a demon, now I'm on the hook to take care of that leg.
Actually.
Because parents are kind of dumb. So, kid comes home with a broken leg, I'm going to get a phone call from an angry mom saying, why did you let them come to this when they broke their leg? They wouldn't have broken their leg if you didn't let them show it.
I'm
See what
so
I mean?
mad you brought
can't
that
win.
up because that reminds me, we've been looking for different events to do this year, and I found a Bigfoot event. And the Bigfoot event had to make a whole paragraph about how you had to be 18 to go on the expedition because sometime in the previous 2 years, a 16-year-old showed up all by themselves and got hurt.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, yeah, 16-year-old tromping around in the woods looking for Bigfoot, and they got hurt.
Yeah.
And their parents just dropped them off,
Yeah, it's like dropping them off at the mall, right?
Yeah. And so
No, I mean, we're not saying anything against a 16-year-old, but I mean, it becomes one of those things. It's like
you could break your leg.
Yeah, and also, I think when Heather made this comment, she didn't know anything about this kid particularly, but other people that seem to know her say, she's mature, she's doing the work, she's doing all this, doing all that.
Yeah.
And so from the outside looking in, from where we're sitting from, it really just appears that she made a comment by making that post and put it out there, right? Mm-hmm. Use some language that probably wasn't appropriate, use the kid's likeness without permission, and it came across as being bully, as being a, kind of a bad, I don't want to really cuss because, I don't want your ears to explode. I used to be in the Navy. I can cuss all day. She came across the wrong way. And then rather than say, hey, that's not what I meant, I really am just worried about the kid's safety because I don't think that a 12-year-old, is of the right mind to be out doing this sort of thing. And plus, how can they protect themselves, right? That's not the way it came across. So I think that as you get older with maturity and you become an adult, when you misspeak or somebody misunderstands what you're saying, and not just one person, but a bunch of people misunderstand what you're saying, it's up to you to clarify. She didn't clarify, and she's been trying to fight this from every angle. But she's getting arrows from every direction, and she's not going to win this fight. And it's already evident that she's not going to win this fight because she's now no longer invited to an event that she was supposed to be, if I read it correctly, a speaker, right?
It was in conversation.
Oh, it was in conversation.
Or at least that's what everybody is saying now.
Oh.
Yeah. So now this very large paranormal conference in, I guess, Louisiana has had to post an official statement saying that this person is no longer welcome at their event. There was no official statement saying this person was definitely going to be there anyways.
Okay.
Yeah. So
see, and that's kind of sad because this event's getting out in front of it before it becomes a thing.
Yeah.
See, so I think that it would have been better suited on both sides. I mean, here's what kind of gets me about the whole thing. We've seen this sort of thing happen with adults, right? Mm-hmm. And older adults.
Yeah.
Where you'll have a group of youngsters out there, and I'm saying youngsters, they're not that much younger than really you or me, out there new in the paranormal world, new in the investigation world, doing their stuff, right? And getting dumped on by the older crowd, just like what this person did to this 12-year-old.
UFO community.
Yeah, making comments that kind of like out of this, it just didn't come across the right way. And, you can only excuse so much of that for age. If you're like 70 years old and you're rocking all caps, trying to do something on the internet, you can kind of let that go. But it's like, okay, is this a direct sort of dig on me? Yeah. Or is this you just can't work the internet? Well, this person has a Facebook page and a YouTube channel and everything else and thinks that they have a wide reach and presence. So I would say that from when I looked and I read that particular post that this person made, it was intent.
Yeah.
It didn't come across that the intent was protect your children against ghosts by not letting them do it. It came across as a little outside of the face, like, I can't believe this crap.
Yeah. I can't believe this teenager is going to be on a very...
I can't,
very significant
like
event.
Don't let anybody, it was just kind of one of those things like, look what's happening to our community. It's just going downhill, kind of a thing. It's kind of the way it came across, right? And I think it was wrong. And, like I said, this whole thing could have been avoided. It would have been better if, hey, maybe some reaching out and was like, hey, this is what I kind of meant by that. And maybe they could have talked a little bit and maybe come together and maybe the older one could mentor the younger one to be another resource so that this kid would have a better chance, right?
Like,
but no, it obviously didn't happen. It's not going to happen. Now there's the rest of the community is going to mentor this kid to try to get them into this field safely as best they can.
Remember Psychic Kids by Chip Coffey?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good example of, trying to introduce that situation, that scenario did not happen.
Yeah. And really, to take the other side of things where, and I'll give you a weird example, like maybe you thought it was okay to just put a jacket on your kid and take them to the store in their nightgown to get donuts.
Okay.
I mean, I'm guilty of that. I have done that.
Oh.
They're still in their nightgown. Let's zip a jacket up. Let's go get some donuts.
All right.
And the looks that I got from parents, particularly moms, that were like, I can't believe you let your kid go out. It's like, judging my parenting skills because in the heat of the moment, me taking my kids to get donuts and just having fun with the world was not good enough because I should have dressed them and combed their hair and did all this crazy stuff, which I probably should have, because I didn't give a crap. I'm like, let's go get some donuts, right? Yeah. But at the end of the day, that was my choice I made to do that.
Mm-hmm.
That was my parenting. Did it hurt anything? No. Were we looked upon as probably being, dirtbags? Probably. But at the end of the day, that was my choice. And there was no harm. There was no foul. So I would say that was okay. But with this whole situation, it's really not up to anyone but the kid's parents and the kid to determine what's right for the kid, especially in this particular area where there is no hard rules with any of this stuff.
Yeah. Like,
do you need a piece of paper from attending like a 3-hour class and taking a test that says you're a paranormal investigator after you've spent $275?
Or a 6-week certificate.
Yeah, or a certificate that says that you can do what you do. No, you don't need any of that stuff. I mean, it may look good to somebody who says, wow, what is that? Well, I'm a certified paranormal investigator. From where? From an unaccredited college.
Well, there's that one college.
But even then,
yeah.
I mean, come on. You don't need any of that stuff to do what we're trying to do here.
And
so it's really up to the community to foster and train people and bring them in. And there is a ton of people, like you were saying earlier, that should not be in this field.
Yeah.
I mean, heck, we probably shouldn't be in this field. But I know that we're a lot better than a lot of people we've run across.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's relative. I mean, the whole paranormal community, the whole paranormal phenomenon, it's all relative, and it's up to the maturity.
Yeah, it's relative and situational.
Yeah, and then the research, the training, the education, again, that's also subjective. I mean, you can sit there and read every single paranormal phenomenon book, every ghost hunting book, and then you can sit there next to somebody who got a 3-hour YouTube video and paid $90. You know?
Well, it's going to be more than that. But
well, I've seen some.
That'd be a good deal. I would just take that, just to have that little piece of paper. So look at me. I'd make it into a badge and wear it on my chest.
But you have to print it out yourself.
That's all right. I'd print it on good paper. Fetch me the good paper, right?
And see, that's part of it, though. Just what we've said so far, that discredits and discounts the community.
Oh, it does.
So,
so there's no winning with this sort of thing when it comes to this. And like I said, this happens to people that are older. This happens to people who've been investigating paranormal and doing all this stuff since they were like 14 years old.
Yeah. And
now they're like in their 30s, and they're getting dumped on by the older crowd. It can be pretty toxic, this whole thing. And it seems like this is just a smaller, a younger version of the entire thing, where you have a person who's been in the field forever is dumping on somebody who's trying to get into the field because of their age.
Yeah.
Which is the same thing that happens when you have like a 75-year-old investigator dumping on somebody who's 30 because you think that the methods they're using to investigate aren't in line with what you grew up doing.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you just barely had air conditioning, 70-year-old. Yeah. So it's a brave new world.
And don't get mad at a 30-year-old because they didn't have to spend 6 hours at a library with a microfiche.
Right. Especially when they have the library of all the world's information at their fingertips called the internet.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a thing. But I do think that this is probably a misunderstanding that could have been avoided and shouldn't have ever really happened. So somebody, maybe not double down and try to fight everything. Do I think it's right for a 12-year-old to do this sort of thing? And, and if I knew him and had a better understanding of who the kid was, I could answer differently. In other words, if it was my kids, I could say, yeah, it would still be up to me. But I think, at the end of the day, man, it doesn't really matter what I think. It really matters what the parents think. But I do think that, if you've got a bunch of people who are willing to, try to do the right thing and make it as safe as possible, there's worse things to be worried about.
Yeah. Like making sure the kid does well in school,
Yeah.
I mean.
But at the same time, it's a thing. So this drama should have been much ado about nothing, but instead it's turned into a cyberbullying issue. Whether it actually meets the definition of cyberbullying, I don't know. I don't think things were done correctly.
My thing is, it reminds me of like how the beauty community went at each other.
Yeah.
On YouTube. Like, and if you Google that or YouTube it, like beauty drama 2019,
The
it's
tea.
just the tea. It's like this vicious nature that we recently, as a society have started to do. I mean, with like, especially like on YouTube, because it gets so vicious when you see someone else doing something in your supposed expertise or field.
Yeah.
People are just coming at each other. And it got real bad like on YouTube with different communities, whether it was beauty or nails or geocaching. It didn't matter. Whatever your niche or your hobby, people were going at each other's throats. And it's funny because I always say that the paranormal community is a little slower than the other communities. It's now hitting the paranormal community.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You mean slower as in slower to feel the effects, or just slower because...
Trends.
Oh.
Yes.
See, if somebody just tuned in, like late, they would hear that you said the paranormal community is just slow.
No. Just stop.
See? We're going to start our own tea here on the CreepGeeks Podcast. So I don't know, if you have any opinion on this sort of thing, chime in. You can hit our Facebook group and leave a comment or whatever.
And we did provide links to everything we just talked about because it is hard to follow.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And so our opinions are our own. And if you want to throw in there and throw a comment out, I'm almost a 50-year-old man. I'm not scared to fight you in the front yard. So it's all good. Say what you got to say.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
What? That's just me putting it out there. Well, you see, this is the beauty of the internet. As I wrap this whole thing up from an aspect that you're probably not looking at, keyboard warriors are huge on the internet, right? Mm-hmm. They're 50 feet tall. They're bulletproof. How dare you?
Yeah.
In real life, things change. I'm just saying. It's true, though. I have a YouTube channel, too, and people want to leave little comments like they know something or whatever. It's like, you don't know me at all. I'm making a nice little how-to video, and you want to leave little snide comments and be trollish. Yeah, it's real easy to be a troll from a keyboard.
Yeah.
Yeah, troll me out my front yard and see what happens. And to quote, cash me outside. How about that, right?
That's what I was going to compare this to.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. This is whole like TMZ.
This is like Bad Barbie versus Whoa Vicky.
Yeah, and you know what? About 90% of the people listening to this podcast have no idea what you're talking about.
I know, right?
It's a thing. But no, anyway, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, and you'd like to chime in, please do.
Yeah.
Be respectful, because we can all talk like adults.
Yeah.
But seriously, if you want to fight in the front yard, we can arrange something.
Just don't use bad words.
So, yeah. Yeah. I draw the line at cuss words.
Well, that way we can still put it on YouTube, okay?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there was no reason for all this stuff, and it happened. And, honestly, if I had made a comment like that and offended somebody, I would probably apologize a little bit. Or not. It kind of depends on what point I was trying to make, right? It's just, but at the same time, though, when you got 1 million people angry at you, it's something that maybe it's time to reevaluate some of the comments or how that came across. And, and that's the thing, too. The big thing is that when you make a comment or you make a post, you have to kind of read it a couple different times to make sure that the intent behind the post is clear. So
that's why it takes me 10 minutes to write an Instagram caption.
You write something out, you got to come back and look at it again. Let me look at this again and see what would this be like if a stranger read this. And if a stranger would be angry and that's not your intent, you probably shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, hey, let's make sure that, I don't know. Let's just make sure that the kids are okay.
Yeah.
And the adults are okay. Let's all just be okay with this stupid thing. It is. It's just so stupid. But, and hey, at the end of the day, it's all good. And who cares? Right? It's just good to be honest.
We got coronavirus.
That's right.
It's going to take us all out.
So hopefully not. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break on the old CreepGeeks podcast and play a commercial for you. And we'll come back. We'll talk about Corona updates. Yeah. It's all good. I'm trying to find the right button. Is that the right button? No, it's this one. Audible is audio entertainment that entertains, educates, and inspires. For you, the listeners of the CreepGeeks podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a 30-day free trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/cheapgeek. Again, that's audibletrial.com/cheapgeek for your free audiobook. Enjoy this with your free trial. 30 days of membership free, plus 2 free audiobooks that are yours forever. 1 credit a month after trial, good for any book regardless of price. Exclusive member savings. Get 30% off additional audiobooks. Easy exchanges. Don't love a book? Swap it for free anytime, seriously. Again, that's audibletrial.com/cheapgeek for your free audiobook today. And we're back.
Yep.
Okay, so as virus spreads, U.S. temporarily bans foreigners who's visited China.
That's
dun, dun, dun.
funny. That's a funny.
Is that like ha-ha
headline.
funny or like,
Because, no offense, it's the New York Times who will rail on people for using the word foreigner.
Yep. But,
And
hey, it's okay when it's the coronavirus.
and that's the other thing. Normally when I'm reading this particular news website, they have a problem when people get temporarily banned.
Yeah, but not today.
Yeah.
And here's what you need to know, according to New York Times. U.S. restrictions will keep out most foreigners who's recently been to China. Stocks sink again after airlines cancel flights to China.
Wow.
Delta, United, and American Airlines are suspending all flights between the U.S. and mainland China. Americans evacuated from Wuhan are quarantined. And so far, according to New York Times, more than 250 people have died and nearly 12,000 infections are confirmed.
That number's higher than the last number I read.
Yes, it is. This is why we're doing an update on it.
Yeah.
Now, there's been some sort of, there's been a bunch of unsubstantiated claims that we talked about earlier that said that 91,000 people have been affected. There's no province at all in China that has not been affected by this, and that the entire thing is possibly an experiment gone wrong.
And we're not going to link to those.
Because they're conspiratorial, and since the links can't be verified correctly, since Facebook is now fact-checking every fact
pertaining to the coronavirus.
they will just basically block all of your stuff.
Yeah. Because we just saw that announcement. If you just
Yep.
log into Facebook now, they're going to give you some sort of alert or notification about it.
Right. And, you know, my thought is with some of these Facebook fact-checker groups that they pay for, I don't believe in their political ideologies, and they don't believe in mine. And I don't believe in any of that stuff that they talk about, and they don't believe in any of the stuff that I talk about. So when you come to a situation like that where one person making probably about $10 an hour can press a button and block your entire Facebook presence, I have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Because you have no voice in the matter. Because at the end of the day, Facebook is a privately owned thing, just like YouTube. So we're not going to give them any ammunition, so we'll keep reporting on what we see. I think that this thing is a lot bigger and has grown, and it will be a much, much larger thing than what we're currently being told, but that's just my opinion based off the news and things like that. And when we trim across news, we try to leave links to reputable news sites like the BBC.
Yeah.
Which is about, you know, I don't know, reputable enough, I guess. So.
Yeah. I mean, that's another podcast unto itself.
Yeah.
But the one update I just saw on this New York Times, because we spoke about this, how the World Health Organization was not going to declare a public health emergency.
Yep.
Well,
guess what?
Now they are.
Yep.
It will be put in place at 5 p.m. on Sunday.
So there you go.
Yeah.
And they're also saying, according to CNN, who doesn't like the fact that I use a pop-up blocker, right? The number of Wuhan coronavirus cases inside the mainland China overtakes SARS as the virus has spread worldwide.
Oh, gosh.
So it's well past SARS, and it's keep getting bigger. Multiple countries have evacuated their citizens from the city at the heart of the outbreak in Wuhan.
Mm-hmm. And this has different numbers.
It does. As of Wednesday, there are 6,061 confirmed cases of the virus in mainland China, including 132 deaths, according to Chinese officials. The number of cases grew around 1,500 from Tuesday, which is more than 30% increase.
That's,
right?
Yeah.
And they don't include the figures from Hong Kong and Macau, both of which have reported a small number of cases. So in 2003 with the SARS outbreak, right, there were 5,300, basically 5,327 confirmed cases of the disease in the mainland with 349 deaths. And that was like during the entire thing. This thing appears to be just getting started.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And so authorities in China have also reported a suspected case of the Wuhan virus in Tibet, which was so far the only region to have avoided the actual virus.
Huh.
So if this has been confirmed, the spread to Tibet, despite the implementation of the strict checks on travelers and closing tourist sites, is going to renew concerns about how easily the virus is transmitted.
That's interesting.
Especially when people are asymptomatic, which means that you don't have symptoms. And that's what made it different. We talked about that too. It's like this virus is different because you can be spreading it and not even know you have it because you have no symptoms. And then when you have the symptoms, it's already been well spread. And the big fear is that this entire thing is going to mutate.
Yeah.
And so evacuees have been leaving Wuhan and they're trying to get out. And, this whole thing, and they try to say that, there's people that are saying, oh, well, this whole thing started because of the market there in Wuhan and people eating weird stuff like bats and koala bears.
Yeah.
I don't think so. This thing was created in a lab. It got out of control. They're like one of the only labs in the world that can make it.
Which is weird because I keep seeing memes of a certain president eating a bowl of bat soup. And I can't find the correlation there.
Well, they're saying that because, you eat bats and stuff like that. I also seen a meme where Ozzy Osbourne was like talking about, he was in a meme where they were talking about bats and things like that. And so, and one of the recent things that I read the other day and did not include it in the podcast was that this virus has been recreated in Australia.
Oh, yeah.
Which is good because if they can recreate the virus and hopefully they can take that information that was released from China that the Australian scientists used to recreate the virus, then they can get everybody else involved in it and maybe get this thing cured.
Yeah.
Because I don't really know exactly how bad this thing really is, but as quick as it's spreading, I can see it maybe not being as harmless.
What in the world?
As what this is coming across. But they're showing that the spread of the Wuhan coronavirus in China is spreading all over the place. Like almost all of it. They're not showing any cases in Mongolia, but if you got like Tibet and Nepal and Myanmar, and then if it gets to India, it's just, come on, man, this thing is crazy.
Could you imagine India?
See, the fear is that, if it mutates, then what good are vaccinations going to be?
Gosh.
So hopefully, since the laboratory in Australia became the first outside of China place to grow the Wuhan coronavirus.
Yeah.
According to this, they did it from a patient sample.
Oh.
But if they can do it, it's going to provide expert international laboratories with crucial information to help combat the virus. And this has happened during a news conference on Wednesday where they talked about it.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so hopefully they'll get a handle on this sort of thing.
This is weird. Some of the other links that you were providing about this and the UK government organizing repatriation of citizens.
Yep.
Citizens located in Hubei province. They're going to let them come back in. I don't understand that.
There's nowhere for them to go.
That's okay.
At least that's the way I look at it. It's like, they're quarantining cities, but it's too late. It's already spread. So where is anybody going to go? And if you believe some of the underground reports that we were seeing, like 90,000 cases and, thousands of being dead already, and doctors being arrested for trying to report how bad it really is.
Yeah.
This thing is an outbreak situation, man. And, it's rapidly spreading through China. It's going all over the place. We've got an unprecedented travel lockdown in 16 cities that affects over 50 million people in China.
Yeah.
This is nuts, man. So hopefully they can find a vaccine, but, even if as I'm reading here, even if the most optimistic timeline suggests several months of scientific development before human clinical trials can begin. Now, if this is something that was created in a lab in China and accidentally released, you think that they'd have something in place to fix this sort of thing. So maybe, I don't know, man. There's a lot of conspiracy kind of popping around about it.
I guess that's why.
And you're not really seeing a lot of it because it seems that the internet is doing a good job of sanitizing things.
Well, that's why this BBC article, the one that I'm looking at, they're answering reader questions the best they can.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate that because this does seem to be pretty, not biased, not kind of overly dramatic, but not downplaying things.
Yeah.
The one thing, though, is partially due to a meme, and that was can the coronavirus be transferred through items bought from Wuhan and posted to UK?
Yeah.
You know this, Steven. Steven bought something from Wish.com or something, and he's just like...
Well, it's scary, man. They've got pictures of, like, kids wearing, like, water bottles on their faces and heads. They're the big ones, though. They're like gallon size, and they just cut them like helmets or something. It's like... Yeah, and I've seen some memes where they talk about, with people wearing a protective respirator mask and stuff like that, how they wear them. Like one guy wearing them over his face, his entire face, and his eyes were, one guy's got a hole poked in his so he could smoke. Stuff like that. And when I seen that, it kind of reminded me back when, like, back in the 70s where you play basketball and people out there playing basketball smoking.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know, this whole thing, and the World Health Organization is going to be telling, hey, okay, this is different now. We're going to go ahead and make this like an epidemic type thing.
Yeah.
Is that what they're saying?
Pretty much.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. So China has the whole, your questions answered thing that you were talking about from the BBC.
Yeah.
And there were some good ones in there, like you were saying. I thought that was pretty, so it's not funny, this whole thing. It's kind of, I don't know, man. Maybe this is one of those things where the more you look at it, the more it scares you. But the less you look at it, the less it scares you, and maybe it'll just go away.
I don't know.
I don't either. So, 83 Britons and 27 foreign nationals being flown back into the UK from Wuhan.
Yeah.
So they got their own thing going on over there.
Wow. Do people who have contracted coronavirus return to full health?
What's the answer?
More than 2 people asked that same exact question.
Yeah, they want to know, hey, if I get it,
am
I just going to have to suck it up for a while or what?
Yes, and the answer is yes. Many of those who contract coronavirus will experience only mild symptoms. These include fever, coughing, and respiratory. Most people are expected to make a full recovery, but it can pose a particular risk for elderly people and those with pre-existing problems like diabetes, cancer, or weakened immune systems.
Yeah, so like the normal thing.
So most Americans.
Yeah.
Yeah. An expert at China's National Health Commission says it can take a week to recover from mild symptoms. Yeah. And then there was another one.
So you get to be like super sick for a while.
Yeah. Is there any reason such viruses are emerging from China? And it's basically large populations of people living in close proximity to animals.
And the fact that they grew it, they made it in a freaking lab. Right?
Yeah.
At least that's the way I've been reading it. I might be wrong, So how worried should we be?
Might be pretty.
I'm going to click the link and see what it says. So you got the virus. What are the symptoms? Starts with a fever, dry cough, and after a week, it leads to shortness of breath, and some people need some hospital treatment. Around 1 in 5 cases are going to be severe or thought to be severe. The infection rarely seems to cause a runny nose or sneezing. Okay, good. Well, I don't have corona then because I've been sneezing, right?
Yeah.
So you can have those symptoms ranging from a mild cold all the way to death. That's great. What are your symptoms? I'm not sneezing. Don't have a runny nose, right? So anyway, how deadly can it be? I mean, the figures right now are unreliable. See, this whole thing is just kind of nutty, right?
Here's an update, and we're not going to really go into it, but...
As we're sitting here with corona.
I know. You know how I said there was a patient off of the Raleigh International Airport?
Yes.
Their test result came back negative. So that's good.
They just had the flu.
Yeah. However, right after that article came out, another article, NC health officials will not disclose possible coronavirus cases until they've confirmed and full symptoms show.
That's nice.
So that's great. That's really helpful too.
It is helpful. I don't want to, if you show up and you have the flu, right? and you get off a plane, because, flying on planes is about the most sanitary thing you can do these days. They don't even ventilate those things half the time correctly. And you show up and you're kind of sick.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, you might have a coronavirus, and it gets out. I mean, that can destroy your reputation. You know what I mean? They're like, don't hang around Omi. She has the coronavirus.
You stop it.
And they'd be like, I just have a little cold. That's what they want you to think. I mean, they really shouldn't say that they have, it should be, okay, you obviously have the coronavirus, so that needs to be reported.
Yeah.
And up until they figure out what it is, they shouldn't be just speculating and wildly speculating about what you have, and it shouldn't go out that way.
Okay.
Don't hang around on me.
Stop.
She has
That's
the
not even
coronavirus. I thought she had sinus from changing weather. And nope.
No.
She's a symptomless spreader.
Asymptomatic.
Symptomless.
Asymptomatic.
Spreaders. No, I'm reading right here. But the problem such as stopping such symptomless spreaders, those are people who don't have any symptoms, will make the job of the Chinese authorities much harder.
Is that
for
off
curing this?
BBC, or where is that off?
This is off BBC.
Okay. They have different
And they're talking
words.
about corona. Well, they also have a whole bunch of different articles.
Yeah.
So it's possible you're not reading the same spot that I am.
Oh, no. I've actually moved on to this whole, what will
Japan
it take?
had 14.
What will it take to stop the coronavirus? And I'm like,
And stop those symptomless spreaders.
Yeah. Oh.
Okay, so the mathematical models of the outbreak so far suggest that more than 75,000 people may have been infected in the Chinese city of Wuhan alone.
Jeez.
We heard 90+ thousand like 4 days ago.
Yeah.
So evidently this will become a global health emergency, like you were saying, from the World Health Organization. They're going to do it as they did with swine flu and Ebola, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's hope this virus doesn't mutate. Scientists will be watching this closely. How can the outbreak be stopped? They're going to lock everything down and lock people up. Like, hey, we're going to need you to stay in your house for a while. You know what I mean? We'll need you to wash your hands and be clean.
They did that for swine flu in certain states.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to lock down a whole city, but, I'm glad that they're trying to do something. So hopefully with the whole world trying to fix this sort of thing, that this won't last nearly as long. And the whole idea of taking a couple months, I think if there's a cure available, I don't think it's going to go through you. Basically, I don't think it's going to take as long to get out as what they're saying with human trials and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think there'll be plenty of volunteers lining up and going, yeah, well, let's put an acceleration on this right here. So, and just as a fun fact, Wuhan is building 2 new hospitals with beds for at least 2,300 people. In the city of more than millions. I don't know how well that's going to work, but hey, that's all right.
Yeah.
So, and, hopefully they'll come up with vaccinations for animals and stuff too. So if your dog gets it or whatever, they can take care of them. So. So anyway, what we've been doing here at the old CreepGeeks Podcast to try to make sure that we don't get Wuhan, because we don't want it, because that would be such a huge inconvenience, is taking lots of vitamins and drinking lots of Mountain Dew Code Red. Actually, we haven't drank any of that Code Red. Anyway, I've been taking vitamins. Here we go.
Electrolytes. It's
I'm gonna
what
get some
plants and viruses crave.
That's right. It protects you against viruses. It's what plants crave. Get some Brondo. So if you know the name of that movie, leave it in the comments below, and I may give you a star.
Okay.
Or not. So, yeah, it's kind of crazy. So speaking of crazy, we came across this, and I want to say I told you so.
Okay.
So I told you so.
Fine.
And what I told you so about was these drones. Remember how I said it's entirely possible these drones isn't even a thing? They're being over-reported, right? It really isn't an issue.
Yeah.
Well, according to Vice, a very reputable news source.
Actually.
Right? Not doing it. Anyway, the Colorado mystery drones weren't real, is what they were saying. So there's a spot in here that the reason why I put this in here when I found it was because I thought it was funny. So they talk about going through and with the drones, and residents began calling in the drones unknown origin, right, where they were going from, moving over the houses and farms, 4 to 10 drones, 6 feet long, right? Sometimes up to 30 drones, and they just kept going on and on. They were first reported by the Denver Post. It kind of keeps going, right? They had like 70 local federal, military officials jumping into action. They formed a joint drone task force, right?
Yeah.
And so, and then on, I think it was, January 13th, Colorado Department issued a statement about the investigation into the mysterious drone sightings, and they confirmed that no incidents involving criminal activity, nor have investigations substantiated reports of suspicious or illegal drone activity. That was on the 13th of January.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, they didn't find anything. Well, it kept going, right? And then on the, there was like 23 reports that happened from January 6th through the 13th. And 13 of those reports were determined to be planets, stars, small hobbyist drones. 6 were commercial aircraft and 4 remained unconfirmed. So out of those reports, right, that's 23 reports that happened. None of the 90 reports from November 23rd and on were confirmed instances of illegal drone activity. Yeah. So, and the night before, when the sergeant was cruising around Morgan City, right, the Yuma County Sheriff's Office was told by someone whose name is redacted in the public records, right?
Yeah.
Who lives to the west of the airport, saw them by his house. And he figures it had to be dangerously close to be interfering with airport airspace. And nobody thought that it might just be a plane.
I wonder if that's that same somebody who says they keep showing up at his house.
It's possible, right?
Yeah.
So I thought this was the funny part, right? The next day, the Yuma County Sheriff, anyways, his name is T.C. Combs. He received an email from a man who wanted to get deputized in order to form a special task force dedicated to the clandestine monitoring, capturing, and persecution of those responsible for the recent public panic. Here's what he said. My team will be dedicated to the liberation of our skies. Right?
Yeah.
And he said, we will be known as Team Alpha Warhawk.
Okay.
And he identified the strengths of each of his team members, including his own. His strength is comic relief. Right? His second in command was a culinary expert and was great, but not amazing. Right? However, he's got what he's got. The third member of the team specialized in weapons/ammunition expert, but was also just an all-around great guy. One of the recruitment pool candidates makes a mean pot of coffee. Another one is the most charming man I've ever met. And the lone member, right, with a name of Hispanic origin was their linguistics expert.
What
so
the heck?
He sent this email off to the sheriff. So the sheriff evidently has a sense of humor. He was like, I will put your team in the toolbox in case I need it. But just be appraised that these operations are usually handled as black ops, and therefore there is no recognition for your service to the community. You'll be regulated to drinking alone, right, at the far end of the bar and not being able to talk about your exploits beyond a knowing glance at your teammates. I will inquire of the feds, whoever that might be, because it's a secret, to the start of the process on your security clearances. Hopefully, our allies in the Middle East have let your travel ban from your previous travels rogue incident, right? Mm-hmm. The misadventures of youth should be allowed to fade into the murky past at some point, expire so that won't be an issue. If not, you will be restricted to operations only on United States soil, which we all know is highly controversial. I think a good cover story would be Windmill Repairman, which would allow you to move freely throughout the area. Thanks in advance for your desire to make Yuma County a safe place, as a safe place for the citizens.
Oh my goodness!
I was like,
this is horrible.
Team Alpha Warhawk. Its strengths were comic relief, culinary expert, right?
Yeah.
Great but not amazing guy. However, he's what we got, right? Weapons, ammunitions expert. Also just an all-around great guy, right? One recruitment pool candidate makes a mean pot of coffee, and another's the most charming man I've ever met. It's almost like the A-Team or something.
I'm pretty sure like Deadpool 3 or whatever is
Team
gonna be
Alpha
just
Warhawk.
like this.
I just thought that was hilarious, man. So I read it when I first read it. I'm like, what? Oh, that's so funny, man.
Yeah. Okay,
so anyway, they go through and they say that the Colorado non-incident adds another issue to it. And with the part of the okay. So the Colorado non-incident adds yet another instance of drone hysteria to the record books, which has been documented by a white paper published by drone manufacturer DJI, of which they are the makers of our drone.
Yeah.
That we currently have. And a study done by the Academy of Model Aeronautics, which has found that only 27 out of the 764 reports of drone sightings by aircraft pilots were legitimate near misses.
Huh.
Yep. And it says, while I can't conclusively say that we have solved the mystery, we have been able to rule out a lot of the activity that was causing concern. That's from Stan Hilke from the Colorado Department of Public Safety, executive director, and he told the Denver Post this. It says, even though it sure sounded like they had solved the mystery, right? Mm-hmm. But we will continue to remain vigilant and respond as new information comes in.
Okay. So.
And they actually have a copy of the papers that were sent.
Yeah. So my
emails.
thing about this is this was a whole lot of nothing. You were right. I have my tinfoil hat on about this in two different ways. And that is either, is this just kind of backtracking and there may still be drone activity going on because there are still reports coming in? Or in about 3 to 6 months, are we going to see the FAA trying to use this situation to the disadvantage of drone users?
Well, it's funny you bring that up.
Okay.
And I wasn't going to put this in the podcast episode. So I don't have a link for it. But according to the Department of the Interior, DJI drones are not safe. And so they've effectively grounded all DJI drones due to threat of cybersecurity.
Even though the Department of the Interior and some of, like, because forest fires and, you know, fire technicians, service, like park rangers and stuff like that, have used DJI in the past. Yeah,
well, DJI makes really good drones, and they're all over the place.
In fact, didn't they use some of them for, like, the fires in New Mexico?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're used all over. I mean, if you're a drone operator and you're under contract with somebody and you say, hey, you can do the job and you have a DJI, you can do it, right?
Yeah.
So the U.S. Department of Interior's announcement that they would basically down, because here's where it gets crazy, right? And down as in you can't fly. The Department of Interior announced that they would down their fleet of drones except for emergency response amid government concerns over security. And they said that although DJI drones represent only a small fraction of the fleet, some proposals from lawmakers suggest that limiting not only Chinese manufactured drones, but also that could include Chinese manufactured parts, including cameras and gimbals. So currently that leaves the government agencies without a comparable alternative. It also leaves the Department of Interior not able to use drone technology to respond to disasters, but does not help manage lands to prevent them.
Yeah.
So, how does cybersecurity, which is really what it is, they're saying that, basically this is a security flaw in Chinese manufactured parts and Chinese drones. You can't buy, even if you built a drone yourself and you sourced the material, some of it's coming from China.
You have no choice.
Right.
Yeah. And
so it makes me wonder, we've got this incident in Colorado with all the drones. Now the Department of Interior is saying, cybersecurity, and they're grounding all the drones. So I wonder what company is going to show up next with an all-American made alternative to be able to sell to the government.
Tesla.
I don't think it'd be Tesla.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But according to Drone Life, there are fully automated drone solutions, and 5G networks are a game-changing combination. So I wonder how good and how quick Amazon's going to be able to start flying, and FedEx is going to be able to start flying. I think all these huge companies are going to be able to fly, right? And I think that recreational drone pilots and maybe even commercial drone pilots, people that get paid to fly drones around, are kind of going to go away. I think the Department of Interior is going to want to having an alternative to buy drones from somewhere, probably from a government contract, maybe Lockheed Martin, General Electric, the one that starts with a D, General Dynamics.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised because some of those guys actually make these big, large drones, like these Predator drones. What would keep them from being able to produce little tiny drones? Nothing. So I don't know. Maybe it's not related. Maybe it is related. Who knows, right? Because it seems like drones have been getting a bad rap here real lately. And so DJI actually went ahead and they put out some information. And they have a response. So, yeah. And about 20% of those drones that they use, right? Because DJI, or the Department of Interior has a fleet of about 810 civilian drones. Only about 20 of those are DJI products, and it's the largest federal government It's the largest in the federal government that has become trusted and valuable resources for the agency. So the biggest part of their drones and the over 10,000 drone missions, right, is everything from surveying migrating birds to fighting wildfires and volcano monitoring stuff, has came from a DJI drone. So they have the biggest sort of line share out of all of this at 20%.
Okay.
So it just kind of makes you wonder, right? And it's like, and so DJI said, that's why we're troubled by a new department policy that takes aims at drone technology. According to the policy, DOI employees, that's Department of Interior, can no longer fly drones by foreign-owned companies or those made with foreign manufactured components with undefined cybersecurity concerns as the sole rationale. This policy has grounded the DOI's entire drone program and all the benefits that come with it. It's an alarming, politically driven decision that places lives and property at risk. First and foremost, the concerns raised by the agency regarding cybersecurity are not grounded in reality.
Yeah.
And as they said last year, we worked diligently with DOI officials who themselves worked with independent cybersecurity professionals and experts at NASA over the course of 15 months to create a safe and secure drone solution that met DOI's rigorous requirements. The result of the collaboration was our government edition, the GE version, right?
Yeah.
Solution which provides additional safeguards so drone data is not intentionally or accidentally shared with unauthorized parties. And then just a few months later, at the request of the Department of Homeland Security, our GI drones were independently evaluated a second time by the Department of Energy's Idaho National Lab, which also found no areas of concern related to data leakage.
And see, that's my problem with a lot of this is the data and security and cybersecurity risks that they're talking about. Every time I've read into them, it has actually related to the data stored after the fact,
right.
Not necessarily the data created or generated by DJI or whatever the company is, whatever drone it is. It is the data that is stored after the fact or currently being used for whatever task.
I mean, that's part of it, but a part of it also was the geofencing technology and all the other stuff that happened with it.
Like DroneSense, which was a company that sold a platform to the government and law enforcement.
Yeah.
They left the data exposed, and it shows where the police departments are flying their drones.
Yep.
And that was like back in December. So, and when I've read articles like that, it's been not the drone itself or the drone manufacturer directly. It has been something that is controlled by the entities that use the drones. I'm having a hard time explaining it.
Yeah, basically, it's what happens with the data when you're done. When you pop the memory card out, transfer a video, whatever it is.
Or the tablet that you're using.
Or your flight plans, whatever.
Yeah, the tablet or the smartphone you're using to operate the drone.
And that's part of it too. That's something that they bring up. They basically talk about, you can't use any electronic device, that doesn't have some Chinese manufactured parts in it.
So does that
They talk about like cell phones, they talk about cameras, they talk about all that stuff.
Yeah.
It says, how many DOI employees use smartphones, laptops, tablets, radios, weather monitors, cameras, and other electronic equipment containing Chinese components in their jobs?
I mean,
and it doesn't make any sense.
You couldn't even apply that rule to other tools used by the Department of Interior, the Geologic Survey company or organizations, because over half of the geology equipment you made these days comes out of China.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's like an apples and oranges thing, but still, it is equipment necessary for our government to use.
Yeah.
And it's all coming from China. I mean, somebody's going to hack the machine that monitors earthquakes. I mean,
who knows? I think that a lot of this is sort of a coordinated thing to bring drones and the control of drones and everything associated with it under some kind of control, so that somebody will, or some company or a group of companies is going to have a huge windfall when they can turn around and lock it all down and lock it out.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where when you hear about like theories like that, where like, oh, well, to use like the cell phone companies, like, well, Verizon and T-Mobile and Sprint, if they all combine together, then they run everything.
Yeah.
And I don't know. But
we
you
had
see,
theories like that in the 80s, though, like all the Ma Bell and Pacific.
well, they broke
Bell.
them up because they were monopoly, right?
Yeah.
But see, what it was like all these other little companies got together, and some of the like really rich people bought the frequency band that cell phones would ride on. They bought up the spectrum, and then they broke up Ma Bell, so that all these satellite phones and wireless communications, before it became a big thing, right, fell under the broadband that they actually bought. And so you got people that became like billionaires over the course of 10, 15 years because they owned the frequency spectrum.
Yeah.
So it was a coordinated effort, right? And so it almost looks like that's kind of what they're trying here. Because it doesn't make any sense, because some of the, and I don't know what's going on, but it seems like some of the rules that are coming out of our government, and I'm not pointing it at the president or the previous president, or even the one coming from the future, are just not thought out, man. They're just like put out there, and it's like knee-jerk reactions and stuff without being well thought out. Like the FCC and YouTube, it's like, what the hell's going on, man? And nobody, it's like either you don't hear about it or you hear about it after the fact. Like, what idiot was like, oh, man, you can't use any Chinese parts in the Department of Interior. Let me go ahead and send an email from my phone letting my people know that you can't use any Chinese parts in these drones, and we want to make sure that we're going to eliminate using Chinese parts in all of in everything. It's like, you can't do that, stupid. It's like saying, oh, man, we're not going to be able to use any transistors or any semiconductors or any circuits or anything like that. It's like, oh, you know what? This is the equivalent of saying, nope, can't use cell phones. Can you imagine? It's like, how are you supposed to do your job? I mean, you can't even drive your car, okay, to your people that work for you in the Department of Interior and say, hey, you can't use Chinese components because your car's got Chinese components. It's like, it doesn't make sense. There's got to be a reason behind it. And I think what's going to happen is that they're going to turn around and wind up knocking some of these companies that make drones out, and then somebody big is going to step in who just happens to make all the components necessary in the U.S., and they're going to get this big, giant-ass government contract, and they're going to be the ones. And they're also going to be the same ones that make drones for, like, Amazon, and they'll be the same ones that make the drones for the Postal Service when they get on board 10 years too late, and they'll be the same ones that make the drones for FedEx and UPS because, see, they won't be able to use the Chinese drones. You see what I'm saying?
But see, that in itself is building a network.
But they'll say, well, wait a minute, these drones have Chinese components in the city. But these have been cleared.
Yeah.
Already, because we use these in the military.
But imagine the folly of being wrong and the audacity, because I've been in some Facebook groups that are using that word right now.
Audacity?
Yeah.
Here's a fun fact. When I was using an editing program to edit audio,
yeah,
I misread Audacity as Audacity. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, I'm using that Audacity program. I looked at it, I'm like, that's just Audacity. But if you think about it, audio,
but it's
audible.
Like, the audacity to just make such a bold claim that, oh, these have been cleared, when you know
it's the same garbage.
There's a 12-year-old out there that's about to hack that and just, I mean,
it would have a sticker.
These unknown follies and cybersecurity risks.
Well, what would happen is that you would basically utilize the drone that came from one of these companies that has been marked certified by the government as being safe, right? And then every year or so, or maybe every 6 months or so, you would have to get that drone recertified and pay a fee to a third-party company who's been set up by the government in order to go out and verify that drones are still using the original components, and you'd have to pay it. And if you didn't pay it, then they would ground your drone.
You mean kind of like the DMV?
Yeah.
Or MVD?
Yeah.
MVD Express?
Absolutely. Just like that. And so that's pretty much what's going to happen, right?
I was just the whole fact.
Because it's almost like the government, I don't think, had or realized how popular drones were going to be, so they didn't have anything in place to control it. And I think now they're playing backup.
Yeah, but right now,
or backtracking, or whatever you want to call it.
The statements from anybody who's technically minded or has a tech background or a tech enthusiast, even like us. I mean, we have some tech background. The wording of this and the whole Chinese parts and cybersecurity risks reads to me just like the campaign against dihydrogen oxygen.
Yep.
It has a deadly chemical.
Yeah.
So be afraid of
This is the
oxide.
Yeah. This is the equivalent of having a boss that types in all capital letters and doesn't know how the internet works.
Yeah.
You know? This is like having a boss who is in charge of running a multi-billion-dollar camera company and doesn't know how to use a camera.
Yeah.
You know? This is the equivalent of a boss who runs the largest cell phone manufacturing company in the world and doesn't know how to use a smartphone. And is making these rules because they don't have enough tech knowledge to go, hold on, man. What you're asking, number one, is going to be incredibly expensive and time consuming. It doesn't even make any damn sense.
It doesn't.
Now, let's say on the flip side of this, because we've been talking about this for entirely too long, that we have departments in the government that are super smart with espionage and all that stuff. And you can have components that have secret codes in them to do secret things.
What? Okay.
And you could like trigger them when you need to do different things. If that's the theory and the worry, right? That, you know, hey, these components coming in from China with like, you know, the semiconductors and basically RAM and things like that, put on all these different devices, have kill codes put in them or spying technology put in them. That's actually a real fear. There has been some theory for a long time that you can have components that have subsets and subroutines written in them that you can trigger to do things, because there's also been, I don't want to say conspiratorial, but there has been groups that say, remember when that Korean missile took off and blew up like right as it went off? Mm-hmm.
But you're also suggesting, and funny because we're going back to China, you are suggesting a Manchurian candidate drone.
No, Manchurian candidate technology.
I know. And
that's entirely possible, and I would not be surprised at all, because, I mean, look at some of these devices you could buy for your home, right?
Yeah.
You can buy a little $25 camera, right? It gets on your network. And that little $25 network camera that you buy basically stores your house information in the cloud. And when you get an alert because your dog knocked over a flower plant or something dumb like that, you can watch the video.
Yeah.
And when you read that and you go, wait a minute, this thing is not safe, because they've had network engineers that go, whoa, hold on a second. Not only is this thing not going to servers in the U.S., why do all the servers that the information goes to, or why are they located in China and then get forwarded to somewhere in the U.S.?
Yeah.
So all the data that you store, all the information that's stored, you have no control over, and you have to agree to it. It's like, why do you have that much security access or open security access to all my information? And people just buy it and they use it.
And they agree to the terms and conditions. And
right.
then they're surprised when those devices, not only are they storing information, but they're accessing the internet or the network without, you know.
You can't even use it unless you're connected to the internet.
Yeah.
And would it surprise you to know that that company that was selling that $25 camera is Amazon? It's true. Look at you can't, and I'm not going to tell you the name of what the camera is. They basically had so many complaints about security that they decided, or the company that is making this little $25 camera that you can use, which actually is a really decent camera, which is backed by Amazon, to where they were only going to use like U.S. servers to store the information. It became such a concern.
Yeah.
Because there was no reasoning behind why you couldn't lock your own camera down to only do what you need. There was no reason, there was no way to do it, and there was no reason to do it. And so it's funny, a couple years later, you hear all these stories about, you know, baby monitors being hacked, and people's like Nest security cameras are wide open, and all this other crazy stuff, and having all this malicious things happen. So I get it. And the whole thing is freaking scary, really. But I think we're going to probably get to the point where we can look at the end of this whole thing as being a flawed approach to security in general. The cost and consequences, and trying to find a solution that works is going to be pretty hard. But
yeah,
I mean, if it's espionage and spying on a modern level, this is the way to do it. Do it in drones, do it in cameras, do it in consumer-based electronics that are put in use of government positions, and spy away, and there's not a whole lot you can do. I don't know. This goes back to one of my favorite series on television.
What?
That we watched together. It was called Battlestar Galactica. Right. It wasn't the first one, which was in the 70s, because that was kind of lame. It was the second one.
Yeah.
Which was great. And you remember what Commander, I almost said Obama, Commander Adama, what was his rule?
What?
No networks.
Yeah.
Remember? With all these old fighters and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
And everything was all networked, and all the departments were networked, and all the computers were networked. And as soon as things were going down, he said no networks, and they had him remove every physical link so that when you wanted to have, like, your flight computer wasn't connected to the navigation computer, all this crazy stuff because of viruses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then you had all the other, battle stars and stuff where people, they were like, they didn't do that sort of thing, and they would immediately get hacked by a Cylon raider.
Yeah.
And kind of the same thing. Thanks, Adama.
Okay.
Anyway, that's about all I got.
Oh.
Yep.
About the drones?
Yep. What, we got more to talk about?
Well, the art.
Yeah, we do. We actually have two things to talk about real quick.
Yeah.
And the first one was, and we didn't report on this because it wasn't real. Remember? The footage out of Washington?
Oh, yes. So, earlier, what was it, 2 weeks now? It's going on 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's been out for a while,
Yeah.
a couple weeks at least.
Washington Department of Transportation shared images and stills of Bigfoot being caught on camera on a certain on a certain section of interstate. And people were trying to analyze the footage and take a look at it. And then places like Singular 14 Society, good on them. They did the research, they did the legwork, and found no. This was pretty much, it's coming out as though it's a prank to not just other employees at Department of Transportation, but also to Washington residents.
Yeah. And evidently what has been going on is this been going on for years.
Yes. And
where some random person puts different things up in different places for the cameras to actually catch.
Including an alien.
Yeah. And it had sort of dropped off for a while and nothing. And then magically this thing popped up.
Yeah.
And the guy who runs those cameras, I can't think of his name, he put it out there because he thought it would be great to share.
But.
And he said, I didn't realize that people would go this crazy over it.
And that's the thing with the Bigfoot frenzy that's going on right now. It was making me angry because I saw it and I'm like, no, this is obviously a cutout. You can tell it's a cutout.
Yeah.
But other places kept perpetuating it. And then finally I saw, Singular 14 Society and one other place shared, some research on it.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly being a keyboard warrior and going, no, look at this. No,
and the research was pretty hard for him to do. They just sent the guy an email.
Yeah, pretty
who runs
much.
the thing. He's like, yeah, that's fake.
Yeah.
He was just letting it roll.
Yeah.
So,
but other people kept perpetuating it to the point where even literally 6 hours ago, I saw another Bigfoot Facebook group share the post.
Yeah. And it's like, it's fake, man.
It's fake.
And it looked fake.
Yeah.
It looks like a cutout parked in a tree.
It looks like a cutout that you could buy it at a Bigfoot festival.
Or if you got some black paint and some plywood, you could make your own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
we didn't report on it because we thought it was fake, and people kept trying to share that. And it's funny because it got shared to our group twice, and I deleted it twice because it's like, it's not real. I'm not doing it. Anyway, but we do have a Facebook group for you to go check out, and you should check it out because there's lots of fun stuff that we share. But one of the things I thought that we've seen here recently, I thought was actually, I seen this a couple days ago, but I didn't really say anything about it or report it. I don't know why. Anyway, okay, so Coast to Coast AM was created by Art Bell. Mm-hmm. Art Bell is the grandfather of all of this.
Yes.
He is the grandfather of paranormal investigations, paranormal news, paranormal. So when paranormal stuff became mainstream, and you could see it on TV, and you could hear it on the radio and social media and all that stuff, he didn't create it, but he is the one who normalized it at night.
Yeah.
And he did it on the radio. And at one time, this guy had like 4 million people listening to people talk about aliens, UFOs, Bigfoots, out-of-body experiences, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
He was bigger than Rush Limbaugh and Oprah Winfrey at night and on AM radio.
What was that? Dr. something? Oh.
I don't know.
Yeah, because, as far as AM radio, bigger than even the Dr. Laura. That's what that.
Oh, she came way later. She doesn't count at all in that factor into any of this. But I mean, we're talking about going back into, late 90s with all this stuff. And he had a radio station that he bought and he created it, right? It was Kingdom of Nye in Pahrump, Nevada. And he is in the Radio Broadcasting Hall of Fame. And he brought, he's got world record, like Guinness Book of World Records for longest broadcast. The movie Good Morning Vietnam was loosely based off of his experience when he was in the Army.
Yeah.
So he is, he was a legend.
Yeah.
And he started the whole thing with Coast to Coast AM, where he switched over from talking about politics and stuff like that to talking about just pretty much weird people calling in about weird stuff. And he normalized it and he made it okay. Now, we're not saying he's the first one to ever do it, because there's lots of books and, he hasn't been doing, or hadn't been doing this forever.
Yeah.
But he made it okay. And it became wildly popular. And in the mid-1990s, when he switched over from political talk to paranormal, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's when the ball started rolling. And so if you look at something like what he did, at one time he had like 500 stations and over 15 million listeners total. Those are, that's unheard of. And that's at his peak, right?
Yeah.
So sadly, there's some things with Coast to Coast. He left the show. He retired. He came back. He wound up, doing some other things and started up another show, and it didn't work out. It was on satellite radio, and then he came back again and fired it up again. And then, unfortunately, he died.
Yeah.
And people say he died of an overdose. Some people say he died in sleep.
There's
some people say he died of lung cancer. I mean, so there's...
And there's all that drama leading up to before his passing. So, yeah.
And he has a long career of things that happened at night when he was broadcasting. There's all these different things. So Art Bell was a legend. He was the godfather to all of this stuff. And this recent article that we seen said, where a plaque and a bench in memory of Art Bell was unveiled in Pahrump, Nevada.
Yeah.
And Pahrump's a small town. So, and they put a plaque up, and it basically says, in loving memory of Art Bell from 1945 to 2018, right?
Yeah.
Donated by fans and Nye County.
Oh.
And there's a bench there too. And, so I thought that was actually pretty cool. So Nye, and basically the Pahrump Valley Times, right? And Nye, they're proud of its most famous promoter, right? They kicked in and they came up $1,128 for the plaque and the bench.
Yeah.
And also a group off Facebook called Friends and Fans of Art Bell. They went and did a GoFundMe and they raised $1,546.
Yeah.
So together they have a nice bronze plaque. It's, and a bench for you to sit and look out over something.
Oh, so
I can't remember what it looks at over. But.
Yeah, so it's in the town's famous Calveda Eye Park. The two roads circling it make the park look like an eye, which is an appropriate location.
Yeah, because he did the Kingdom of Nye.
And you can kind of see, it kind of overlooks part of, I guess, the neighborhood area, and you can get a nice scenic view of the mountains behind it.
Yeah.
So it's just wonderful.
And he had some issues. I mean, not to, he wasn't like, but he had some issues doing his thing. I liked him. He was my favorite. And he gave a lot of people their start, and George Norrie, I mean, he may have had some shows going on. I had never heard of George Norrie at all until he was able to sub for Art Bell.
Yeah.
So, I'd never heard of Knapp until he subbed for Art Bell. I'd never heard of any of those guys, never heard of Ross. He's like, want to take a ride like that. I never heard of any of those guys and I never heard of any of the paranormal stuff that you hear about now, like Rosemary and Guiley, and all that stuff. So it sort of paved the way for all that sort of thing. Because back then, the only thing you could really see on TV was stuff like the Twilight Zone, maybe some weird science shows every once in a while, In Search Of. And that was, and if you caught some weirdness like that on TV, it was great. Were on,
because I was a kid, they were on way too late for me. I had school,
This dude was rocking it out, in the freaking desert late at night to like 15 million people on AM radio. And it was fantastic. And the cool thing was he did it all himself. He was his own engineer.
Yeah.
This dude, because he's a radio legend. So, things change, things happen. He kind of got, kicked out of his. Anyway, it's a long story, but if you're interested in Art Bell, or if you know who Art Bell is, and you ever go out there, you should probably go. If we ever get to Pahrump, Nevada, we're going to get our picture. We're going to go take our picture next to him because Art Bell was huge.
Yeah.
So, and if you don't like Art Bell, I'll fight you in the front yard, and that's all there is to it. So, because some people are like, well, and I'll be honest with you, once Art Bell left Coast to Coast, it was okay for a while. Then he came back and he left again. It's like the last time I listened to Coast AM, not impressed, especially with what happened to him when he came back to go to satellite radio. He was going to be on, Art Bell was going to be on Sirius and XM, I think. Yeah. Satellite radio. He kept having problems with quality, and he was, basically he is a radio engineer, and people were trying to say, you just don't know what you're doing, but he was like, no, there's something wrong with this sort of thing. And he kind of, said, hey, if you don't fix this, I'm not going to come back. And they basically drug him out and they let him sit, and he didn't come back. And Nori and Coast to Coast took all of his stations that he was broadcasting to. They took his satellite radio. And it was like, because he had theories, because he knew conspiracies, right?
Yeah.
And he just knew that some of these companies like Clear Channel were conspiring against him. And come to find out, it looks like they were. Here's the deal.
Don't say that name.
What, Clear Channel? Hey, it's a theory. Is it real? I don't know. It's something that I heard on the internet. Is it rumor and innuendo? Possibly.
I am legit afraid of that particular theory.
It's possible.
Because if you dig into that one, it stretches not just to it stretches past Art Bell.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, Art Bell, he opened the door for a lot of this stuff. He made ghost hunting and mainstream. So now all the ghost shows you watch and UFO and all this other stuff, ancient aliens and all that jazz.
He made paranormal entertainment mainstream.
Yeah. Well, he made the idea. He made it less of your freaking nut job for being interested in it and more of, let me take this stuff seriously. Yeah. Because, other radio stations and stuff, once they finally realize, wow, this guy's got like 15 million people listening, they try to take it seriously too. They're like, hold on a second now. Yeah. Some of these nut jobs calling in maybe aren't nut jobs after all. And so it sort of put things in a more serious light, I think. Yeah. And one of the things that he did on the radio that I enjoyed was that you could call in and say, I'm a reincarnated horse. And he'd say, tell me about that. He gave you your due.
Yeah.
And he didn't, and there was a few times when he lost his cool, but for the most part, he gave you your due. And he would, he was serious about it, which was good. Yeah. So anyway, that's about it for that. So yeah, when we go to Paranormal Nevada, because we're going to check it out. We're going to go to the park, get a picture taken.
Okay.
Because why not?
Yeah.
So, okay. Anyway, I think that's about all we got for now.
Yeah, it is. So thank you guys for tuning in and listening. If you want to check out anything we've talked about, all the links will be in the show notes for this podcast episode. Questions, comments, contact at CreepGeeks.com or go to CreepGeeks.com and click that Contact Us form. Be sure to interact with us on social media. Those links are also in the show notes. And, that's pretty much it.
Very nice.
Yeah.
All right. So appreciate you listening to CreepGeeks Podcast.
One more thing. Yeah. The podcast has new stickers available.
Yes.
You should check those out on our Facebook page.
Yeah, they're actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
So there you go.
That's about it.
All right. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please let us know. Otherwise, see you later. Take it easy. Bye, Sickle.
Bye.